The Golden Arquette was a cold Friday morning in Silicon Valley. The kind of morning that pressed into your skin like quiet memories. Sundar Pichai stepped out of his car adjusting his scarf. He had just returned from a whirlwind trip to Europe, meeting leaders, investors, and students. Tired but calm, his mind buzzed with ideas for the next Google product launch. He wasn't supposed to be here, not at this time. His driver had taken a wrong turn off El Camino Real, and rather than turn back, Sundar decided to walk the last few blocks to clear his head. That's when he saw the McDonald's, not the kind you'd expect near Google headquarters. It was small, a bit weathered. A flickering neon sign buzzed above the entrance. And the smell warm fries, fresh oil, old memories. He hadn't eaten there in years. Something made him stop. He stepped inside. The place was nearly empty. A young couple whispered at a corner booth. A man in a hoodie scrolled through his phone. Behind the counter, a woman wiped down trays, and the cashier took an order from a teenager in a rush. Then Sundar saw him, the man working the grill in the back. His hair was thinner than before. Face older, but those eyes were familiar. Wide, focused, a quiet kind of energy. Sundar's breath caught in his throat. It was Rajat MEHR. Years ago. Rajat had been one of Google's most respected engineering directors. Sharp, disciplined, kind to interns, feared by competitors. He led the team that built early versions of Android. Sundar used to learn from him, sometimes just by watching from the side of a meeting room. And then one day, Rajat was gone. No farewell party, no press release, just silence. Now he was here, working the grill at McDonald's. Sundar blinked, not quite believing what he saw. He stepped forward slowly, eyes fixed on Rajat. A tray clattered behind him, but Sundar didn't turn. "Hi, Rajat," he said, voice soft. Raj froze. He looked up, spatula midair. His eyes met Sundar's. "Oh," Rajat said. He looked down again. "You shouldn't be here." "Neither should you," Sundar replied. There was a pause. Rajat turned back too. The grill, flipping a burger with deliberate calm. "Just helping out," he said. They were short-staffed. "Come on, Rajat." Another pause. "Fine," Rajat said. "Lunch break in 10. Sundar nodded. He sat down at a corner booth, heart pounding. 10. Minutes later, Rajat slid into the seat across from him. He wore a grease-stained apron and carried 2 small coffees. He pushed one toward Sundar without a word. They sat in silence. Then Sundar asked, "What happened?" Rajat stared at the table. His fingers traced a small ketchup stain. "You really want to know?" "Yes, I believed in something," Rajat said. "And then I lost everything because of it." The words felt heavy, like they had waited years to be spoken. Sundar said nothing, giving him space. "It wasn't Google's fault. It was mine, a decision I made, a risk I took. Some people said it was brave. Others said it was reckless." "What kind of risk?" "I stood up for a group of engineers. Their project was shut down. I thought it had potential. I tried to defend it. There were consequences." "So they forced you out?" Rajat shook his head. "Not exactly. They didn't have to." The silence was enough. The meetings had stopped. The calls that never came. The looks, those looks. Sundar did. "I thought I could start over, but my wife, she got sick, and we had to sell the house. Now I'm just trying to get by." Sundar felt his throat tighten. This wasn't just about career. It was about pride, about survival. "Do your kids know?" "They think I'm consulting for startups," Rajat said, managing a smile. "I work night shifts mostly. Keeps the story alive." "You're too good for this," Sundar said. "Maybe," Rajat replied. "But sometimes life doesn't care how good you were. It just wants to see how much you can take." Sundar leaned forward. "Come back. Let me help." "Help?" Rajat looked at him sharply. "With what?" "Pity. I don't want a job just because you feel sorry for me." "No, not pity," Sundar said. "Respect." Rajat blinked. "Respect for the man who once taught me how to ask the right questions, who saw potential in teams that others ignored." "I don't know where you've been, Rajat, but I know you don't belong here forever. Rajat looked away. It's not that simple. Maybe not. But it starts with a conversation. Let's talk again tomorrow. Rajat hesitated, then nodded. All right. Tomorrow. They stood up. Sundar looked back once more before stepping outside Dot as he walked away. Something in him had changed. He couldn't forget the way Rajat had looked at the grill, as if it were a battlefield. A man who had lost almost everything, yet still stood with quiet dignity. This wasn't just a meeting, Dot. It was the beginning of something, Dot, something he didn't fully understand. But he would soon dot asterisk shadows of the past next day. The sky above. Mountain view was a heavy gray, the kind that made the world feel smaller, quieter. It was the kind of morning that made people stay in bed a little longer, drink their coffee a little slower. But Sundar Pichai was already awake, sitting at his kitchen table, his laptop open but untouched. His mind was still at that small McDonald's on the corner of El Camino Real. He couldn't stop thinking about Rajat Mehra, about the way he stood. Behind the counter, apron tied tight, flipping burgers with a steady rhythm like it was some kind of penance. And the way he had spoken, calm on the surface, but underneath, years of swallowed pride, buried pain, and quiet resilience. It haunted him. Sundar had seen brilliant people leave tech before. Some burned out, others moved on to build something of their own. But Rajat's disappearance had always felt off. Too quiet, too sudden. Sundar had thought of him occasionally over the years, during meetings where his old insight would have changed the course of a product, or when a new hire showed potential but lacked guidance. Raja had been that rare kind of leader who made people believe they mattered. And now he was living a life hidden in plain sight. Sundar closed his laptop and stood. He wasn't sure what he was doing yet, but he knew one thing: he needed to see Rajat again. Not as a CEO, not as a billionaire, just as a man who remembered what it meant to owe someone more than a debt. He arrived at the same McDonald's just after noon. This time, Rajat wasn't behind the grill. Sundar stepped inside and looked around. A different crew was working the floor. No sign of him. He hesitated, then walked up to the counter and asked quietly, "Is Rajat here today?" The young man at the register looked at him with confusion. "Rajat? Oh, you mean Mr. Mehra? Nah. He left about an hour ago." "Said he wasn't feeling well." Sundar nodded. "Do you know where he lives?" The young man looked hesitant. Sundar pulled out a card and slid it across the counter. "I'm not here to bother him. He's an old friend. Please, if you see him, tell him Sundar came back and that I'd like to talk." The young man looked down at the name on the card, his eyes widening just a little. "Wait, Google Sundar." Sundar gave a small smile. Just Sundar. He stepped outside into the cold wind and stood still, wondering if he had just imagined everything. If Raja had seen him yesterday and decided it was a mistake to reconnect, maybe the shame ran too deep. Or maybe he just didn't want to be found. But Sundar didn't believe that. He walked for a long time after that. Through the quiet streets, past rows of shops and cafes. The city had changed over the years, grown slicker, faster, more expensive, but some corners still held memories. Old bookshops, tech meets above garages, parks where engineers sat on benches sketching out the future. Then, as he turned down a side street, he saw him. Rajat was sitting on a low wall in front of a closed pharmacy, hands wrapped around a paper cup of coffee. He looked up slowly as Sundar approached, his face unreadable. "You found me," Rajat said quietly. "I wasn't looking for you," Sundar replied. "I was looking for an answer." Rajat chuckled dryly. "You always had a taste for the poetic." Sundar sat beside him. For a moment, neither of them spoke. "I walked away because I believed it was the right thing," Rajat said finally. "Those engineers, do you remember them? Team Zeta?" Sundar nodded. Vaguely. They had been a small research group, experimenting with predictive algorithms for emergency response. It had sounded ambitious but noble. "They built something that scared people," Rajat continued. "It wasn't dangerous. It was just disruptive. It could predict supply chain failures in hospitals with eerie accuracy. But it worked so well. It started exposing weaknesses in larger healthcare systems. That made some people uncomfortable. Very powerful people. So it was shut down. No, it was buried, Rajat said. And when I tried to defend it, they didn't fire me. They just made me invisible. No more meetings. No feedback. Budget cuts. My team scattered. And you didn't fight back? I did. For months. But you know how these things go? The harder you fight, the more you become the problem. Eventually, my name became a cautionary tale. People stopped returning my calls. So why not start something of your own? Rajat looked away. My wife got sick around the same time. Cancer. Aggressive. We burned through savings. I tried consulting, but the offers dried up. And when she passed, I didn't have anything left, not even myself. Sundar's throat tightened. He hadn't known. No one had. I took a job at the library for a while. Then I drove for a rideshare app. McDonald's was consistent, easy to disappear into. You didn't deserve that, Sundar said. Asterisk. Deserve has nothing to do with it, Rajat replied. Life doesn't wait for apologies. The silence that followed was thick with shared memory. Sundar remembered how Rajat used to stand at the whiteboard, sleeves rolled up, marker in hand, talking with fierce clarity. Now here he was, slightly slumped, eyes tired, but still, something in him not broken. Maybe bent, maybe scarred, but not broken. I'm not here to fix your life, Rajat, Sundar said after a moment. But I want to offer you something. What? Your voice back. Rajat turned. What does that mean? There's a new initiative I've been planning. Something real. A moonshot for public good. Not for investors, not for shareholders. Just people. And it needs someone who isn't afraid to see past the obvious. Someone who's lost everything but still believes. I'm not that man anymore. You're exactly that man. The wind picked up, blowing dry leaves down the sidewalk. Just meet the team, Sundar said. One meeting, no expectations. Rajat didn't answer right away. Then, slowly, he nodded. One meeting. They stood, and Sundar. Rajat added, before they parted, thank you. Not for the offer, for seeing me. As Sundar walked away, something in his chest felt lighter, but he also knew the road ahead would not be smooth. People at Google would raise questions. Some would resist. Others might dig into Rajat's past and twist it, but Sundar didn't care. This wasn't about politics, This was about something. Larger, redemption, respect, and a promise he hadn't known he needed to keep, as he got into his car. His phone buzzed with messages and meeting reminders, but he ignored them because for the first time in months, he wasn't thinking about products or market share. He was thinking about people and what it really meant to lead. Asterisk returned to the glass towers. Conference room on the top floor of Google's main campus had always felt like a glass ship floating above the world. Untouched by time or noise, walls made of high-grade transparent panels offered sweeping views of Silicon Valley. Town. Below, the streets bustled with engineers, coders, interns running late, but up here, everything moved slower, cleaner. Sharper. Sundar sat near the far end of the long, polished table. He had cleared his schedule for this meeting, something he hadn't done in weeks. A stack of mock-up designs sat unopened next to his phone. He wasn't thinking about product rollouts or quarterly numbers. He was waiting. The door opened with a soft click, and Rajat stepped in. He wasn't wearing a suit. Instead, a simple gray shirt and slacks. He looked out of place, like a memory that had wandered into the future by mistake. The quiet hum of the air conditioning filled the space between them. Sundar stood. Thanks for coming. Rajat gave a nod, eyes scanning the room. Place hasn't changed much. Some things haven't, Sundar said, but the people have. We'll see, Rajat replied. Sundar motioned for him to sit. The room remained quiet until the door opened again. A small team of 6 entered engineers, designers, 2 data scientists, young, brilliant, but not yet hardened. They took their seats with curiosity in their eyes. This is Rajat Mehra, Sundar said, introducing him without ceremony. Some of you know the name. For those who don't, he helped build the foundation this company stands on. There was a moment of silent recognition. A few heads nodded. One of the engineers, a woman with tight curls and sharp eyes, whispered something to her colleague. Rajat didn't react. He simply looked down at the table. Sundar continued, "We're building a system that can respond to community disasters. In real time, fires, floods, health system failures. But not just alert solutions. Supply chain routing, volunteer deployment, local coordination, real-time simulations." He paused. "And I believe Rajat can help us get it right." Someone coughed lightly. Then the woman spoke. "No offense, but isn't this the same Rajat Mehra who disappeared after pushing a failed project 10 years ago?" The words were sharp, but not cruel. Just honest. The kind you expect in a room full of people trained to see patterns and question everything. Raja looked up. His voice was steady. It wasn't failure. It was shut down before it had the chance to prove anything. Why? Because it made people in power uncomfortable. So why would this be different? She asked without a pause. Because you're asking different questions, Rajat said. And because this time, the right people might be listening. The team looked at Sundar. He didn't answer the question directly, but his silence held weight. Over the next hour, Rajat began to speak again, not as the man flipping burgers, not as someone broken, but as the builder he once was. He asked precise questions about data, redundancy, resource mapping, machine learning reliability in high-stakes environments. His mind moved fast, and though his voice was calm, it had power. The team leaned in. They started scribbling notes, ideas, bounced around the room like sparks catching dry grass. By the end of the meeting, there was something in the air that hadn't been there before. Hope. As the others filtered out, Sundar stayed seated. Rajat remained as well, his eyes fixed on the view outside. The mountains in the distance were faded in the haze. How did that feel? Sundar asked. Like waking up from a very long sleep, Rajat said. But the world outside the dream has changed. And I'm not sure it's ready for me. Maybe it's not, Sundar said. But maybe you don't need it to be. Maybe you just need one reason to stay awake? Rajat nodded slowly. You're offering me a job, aren't you? No, Sundar replied. I'm offering you a mission. A second chance to do what matters. Rajat leaned back, folding his arms. What? If I fail again, then you'll fail forward. But you won't be invisible this time. I won't let you be. Rajat looked down at his hands. They were older now, but still steady. You know what scares me most? He said, not the failure, not the judgment. It's the silence that follows. The part where people forget you were ever here. Then let's remind them, Sundar said. Loudly, for the first time in years, Rajat smiled. A small, cautious smile. Like someone finding a photograph of themselves they thought was lost. All right, he said. I'll stay, for now. Sundar stood and extended a hand. Rajat hesitated just for a second, then took it. Got it. It was a moment that passed without applause, without fanfare. But it marked the beginning of something new, something uncertain. Something real. Later that night, Rajat walked home in the quiet. He didn't own a car anymore. He liked walking. It helped him think. He'd passed the McDonald's, still open, golden arches casting long shadows across the sidewalk. Someone inside waved. He waved back. It was the kind of wave you gave when you weren't sure if you belonged somewhere anymore. His small apartment smelled faintly of detergent and books. He sat down on the edge of his bed and looked at a photo on the wall. His wife, smiling in the sunlight, eyes squinting, wind in her hair. You'd laugh at all this. He whispered. He closed his eyes. And then his phone buzzed. A message from Sundar. Just 2 words. Tomorrow matters. Rajat stared at the screen for a long time. Then, slowly, he typed back. I'm ready. But just as he hit send, a knock came at the door. 3 knocks. Soft, but urgent. Raj frowned. He wasn't expecting anyone. He stood, heart suddenly tight, and opened the door. Standing there was a man he hadn't seen in over a decade. A man whose presence sent a chill down his spine. We need to talk, the man said. You're making the wrong people very nervous, Rajat. Asterisk ghosts in the hallway. Hallway outside Rayat's apartment was narrow and dimly lit. The overhead bulb flickering like it had forgotten whether it was supposed to live or die. The man standing in the doorway didn't wait to be invited in. He stepped forward, slow and deliberate. Like he owned the space, like he had once owned everything around it, Rajat stepped back instinctively. Body stiff, the old instincts kicking in. This man, tall, lean, sharp-jawed, with graying temples, wasn't just a stranger from the past. He was a warning. Still living like this? The man said, looking around. Modest? I suppose that's the word. Why are you here, Daniel? Rajat asked, his voice calm, but with an edge. After all this time, Daniel Chen, once a senior vice president at Google, a master of strategy, quiet deals, power plays wrapped in smiles. He had been the one who called Raja a valuable but volatile thinker in a confidential email that somehow became very public. He had been the one who orchestrated the slow freeze of Rayat's influence until he quietly disappeared. Now he was here, uninvited. I heard you've been back on campus, Daniel said, glancing at the photo of Rayat's late wife on the wall. Quite the comeback story, almost inspiring. Say what you came to say, Rayat said, folding his arms. I don't have the patience for games anymore. Daniel smiled. It was the kind of smile that never reached the eyes. I'll be direct then. Your involvement with Sundar's initiative, it's making some people uneasy. Why? Because you don't know when to stop pushing. You never did. And the things this project touches, disaster response, medical systems, municipal data, they're not just academic puzzles. They're pressure points. And pressure points attract power, so now you care about power? No, Daniel said. I care about stability, and you? You have a history of throwing matches at gasoline. Rajat took a deep breath. You didn't come to warn me. You came to scare me. I came to give you a chance to walk away before this gets ugly. You think Sundar can protect you? You think good? Intentions are enough? We both know how this world works. And we both know what you did to Barry Zeta, Rajat snapped. For a moment, Daniel's face tightened. Just a flicker. Enough to confirm that the guilt still lived somewhere beneath the polish. The world moved on, Daniel said. You should too. Rajat stepped forward now, eyes sharp. You're not scared of me. You're scared of the truth. You're scared that I remember everything. That I still have copies, logs, timelines, emails. Be very careful what you say next, Daniel said, voice suddenly low. No, Rajat replied. You be careful. Because this time I'm not alone. A tense silence wrapped around them. Then Daniel exhaled, stepped back toward the door, and adjusted his collar like nothing had happened. You always did have a flair for drama, Rajat. Just remember, if you dig too deep, the ground might not hold. And with that, he walked away, footsteps echoing down the stairwell. Rajat stood frozen, listening until the building settled back into quiet. Then, slowly, he closed the door and locked it. The tremble in his hands wasn't fear. It was something older, something heavier. He walked to the corner of the room and pulled open a drawer he hadn't touched in years. Inside was a small metal box, taped shut, dusty, forgotten. He peeled back the tape, opened it, and pulled out a thin hard drive. The Zeta project, not the clean, packaged version that had been buried under corporate silence, but the raw code, the incident logs, the simulations, the entire timeline from its first line of script to its final shutdown command. He ran his fingers over it, then set it down carefully and stared at it for a long while. The next morning, Sundar waited at the usual meeting spot, a quiet corner room in one of the newer buildings on campus, glass on all sides, but shaded by trees. The team trickled in, one by one, but Rajat wasn't there. Sundar tried not to worry. People ran late, especially people still learning to come back from being lost. But when Rayat finally walked in 30 minutes late, he looked different, his shoulders straighter. His eyes harder, though he set a manila envelope on the table, right in front of Sundar. What is this? Sundar asked. Everything, Rajat said. Everything they tried to erase. Sundar opened the envelope slowly. Inside were copies of emails, system architecture, voice memos, the early plans of Zeta, the first successful simulations, and more internal warnings, security flags, anonymous tips from hospitals, and notes, Rayat's own notes on how the system had been silenced not because it failed, but because it worked too well. Daniel Chen came to my apartment last night, Rajat said, voice quiet. He told me to walk away. Said I was poking into dangerous territory. The room was silent. The young engineers stared at the documents with wide eyes. The woman who had questioned Rajat earlier looked at him now with a different expression, something closer to respect. Sundar closed the envelope and set his hands on top of it. If we use this, he said, we can't turn back. I don't want to turn back, Rajat said. I want to finish what we started. Then we need to prepare, Sundar said. And just like that, the meeting changed. The room shifted from brainstorming to strategy. Rajat began laying out a new system, one that merged the strengths of Zeta with modern data pipelines. A system that didn't just predict disaster, but responded to it in real time. He spoke with urgency now, not just as a builder, but as a witness. Every line of code became a chance to rewrite not just a product, but a history stolen from him. As the hours passed, a fire began to burn among the team. This wasn't about career milestones or promotion packets anymore. This was about something larger. Justice. A story that had been buried, now being unearthed in the clean, bright light of a second chance. Late that night, Rajat walked the quiet halls of Google campus alone. The lights above glowed softly, the echo of his footsteps reminding him of the years he had walked these halls with purpose, and then the years when he had walked them only in memory. He reached the rooftop terrace and stood at the edge, looking out at the valley. Somewhere out there, Daniel Chen was watching, waiting. But Rajat wasn't afraid. He pulled out his phone, opened the message thread with Sundar, and typed 2 words. We begin. Just as he hit send, another message popped up. Not from Sundar. From an unknown number. If you publish what's in that envelope, you'll destroy more than careers. You'll destroy lives? He stared at the screen. No name. No face. Just a quiet threat. And beneath it, another message followed. You've been warned. Asterisk. The weight of silence hadn't yet risen over Mountain View. But the world was already stirring. Inside a quiet office tucked in the far corner of Google's innovation wing, a section few had clearance to access. Sundar stood staring at a whiteboard covered in diagrams. Red and blue lines crisscrossed like veins on a body, each one connected to something larger. Cloud infrastructure, emergency response, predictive algorithms, ethical oversight. But beneath the complexity of the plan, there was something deeper. Truth too many had chosen to forget. Behind him, the door opened softly. Rhea entered, clutching a thermos of tea, eyes clouded by sleeplessness. He didn't speak at first. Instead, he walked slowly to the table, placed his bag down, and unzipped it. The same hard drive from days before, the same metal box, and something newer. Folded newspaper from years ago. The headline read, Google shutters experimental division amid internal concerns. Rajat set it all down in front of Sundar. It's time, he said. Sundar turned, watching him closely. You're sure? They've already threatened me? If I stop now, it proves they still control the story. Sundar nodded, silent for a long moment. Then he picked up the hard drive. We'll do it carefully, strategically. We won't just leak. This will rebuild it the right way, with transparency, with ethics, with protection for the people it could help. And what about the ones it could hurt? That question hung in the room like a storm cloud. Because the truth was, Zeta wasn't just a system that could predict disasters. It had been designed to see patterns in everything: logistics, population movement, social behavior, even medical breakdowns weeks before symptoms appear. In the wrong hands, it could become something else entirely. Surveillance, control, and that was why it had been buried. Later that day, Rajat sat with the team, now expanded to include new talent handpicked by Sundar. They worked in a locked room, laptops open, screens filled with lines of raw code. They weren't just engineers anymore. They were archivists of a future that had once been stolen. The lead data analyst, a young man named Dev, looked up from his screen. These models, they're years ahead of anything we're currently using. How did this get built and then vanish? Rajat paused before answering. We didn't play by the rules, he said. And the rules weren't written to serve the people. They were written to protect systems of comfort. Dev blinked. I mean, some people decided it was better to lose lives slowly than disrupt the structures that benefit them. Silence. Then the woman who had once challenged Rajat, Maya, spoke. We can't unsee this now. If this system had been deployed even in limited form, hospitals in 3 states would have avoided last year's equipment shortages. People died because of that, and they'll keep dying, Rajat said, voice heavy. Unless we build again. They all nodded. The work resumed, but not everyone was pleased. Across town, in a private boardroom lit only by a wall of monitors, Daniel Chen stood facing a group of individuals in tailored suits. They weren't part of Google, not officially. They were stakeholders from government and enterprise sectors, people with interests that extended far beyond product lines. He's going forward with it, Daniel said, pointing to a projection of Raja on the screen. He brought everything out of cold storage. He's rewriting the framework. Then why are we still discussing it? One man said sharply. Take legal action. It won't work, Daniel replied. Sundar is protecting him. And if this goes public the wrong way, we don't just lose control, we lose the narrative. What's your solution? We discredit him publicly. If the world sees Rajat as unstable, paranoid, emotionally compromised, they won't trust anything he's built. And Sundar, we make him choose between the company and the man. The room went quiet. A woman leaned forward. Do you think he'll choose the company? Daniel smiled faintly. I think even good men have breaking points. The next morning, it began. An anonymous blog post appeared online, spreading quickly across tech news forums. It accused Rajat Mehra of professional misconduct during his time at Google. The article claimed he had tampered with medical simulations, exaggerated the potential of the Zeta project, and caused internal chaos that led to wasted millions. Within hours, old headlines resurfaced. Journalists who had once admired Rajat began publishing hit pieces dissecting his past with clinical precision. By evening, it had reached Sundar's desk. He sat in silence, scrolling through the headlines. The words were poison, not just for Rajat. For the entire initiative. Across from him, Rajat stood, hands clenched. They're rewriting history, he said quietly. I know. They're trying to make me look like a lunatic. I know, Sundar repeated. And then, slowly, he looked up. So we're going to fight. How? Asterisk with transparency. We open source the framework. We release the real data, not through press releases, through universities, hospitals, trusted voices. They'll sue us. Let them. Rajat stared at him. This was not the Sundar he remembered from 10 years ago. This was someone else. Someone who had finally decided that some things mattered more than boardroom approval. I won't let you lose everything for me, Rajat said. I'm not doing this. For you, Sundar replied. I'm doing this for everyone who's told to sit down when they tried to stand up. A pause. Asterisk. And I'm doing it because you were right. Rajat sat down. For the first time in a long time, the weight on his chest eased. But the threat hadn't passed, because what they were about to do next wouldn't just change careers, it would change lives. That night, we received another message. No threats. This time. Just an address. A warehouse in San Jose. And a time. Midnight. Beneath it. 2 words. No cameras. He stared at it. He knew what it meant. The past wasn't done with him yet. He picked up his coat and stepped into the darkness. Asterisk the light in the silence. His warehouse sat on the far edge of San Jose. tucked between abandoned rail lines and old shipping yards long forgotten by the city's growth. It was the kind of place built for things no one wanted to see: storage, secrets, silence. The streetlights nearby flickered weakly, casting shadows that stretched far across the cracked pavement. Ryat stepped out of his rideshare and stood, facing the warehouse doors. His breath came out in slow clouds. In one hand, he held nothing but a phone with a blank screen. No contacts, no cameras. In the other, his old notebook worn at the edges, pages filled with sketches, logs, the ghost of a system once deemed too powerful to exist. He had been here once before, years ago, before everything had unraveled. He pushed open the rusted side door. Inside. The air was cool and heavy with the smell of oil, dust, and time. Faint light spilled from a row of floor lamps. At the far end of the space, a folding table stood beneath a single hanging bulb. Behind it, seated and waiting, was a woman. Not Daniel, not a Google executive, someone else entirely. "You came," she said. "You sent the message?" She nodded. "I used to work with you. Before Zeta." Rajat blinked. His mind pulled at half-forgotten memories. The voice was familiar. "Lena?" He said it last. She smiled faintly. "You remembered?" Lena had been a systems ethicist in the early days of the Zeta team. Sharp-minded, detail-obsessed, always questioning the cost of speed. Rajat had respected her immensely. And then, like so many others, she had vanished without a trace when the project was buried. "I thought you left the country," he said. "I tried," she replied. "But you can't outrun guilt. Or truth." "Why am I here, Lena?" She gestured to the chair across from her. Rajat sat. "There's something you never saw," she said. "Back when Zeta was being tested. There was one final simulation. An unauthorized one. It ran for 6 hours before it was manually shut down. I never heard of this, because I buried it. I wasn't proud of what it showed. No one was." She opened a battered laptop and turned the screen toward him. "Watch." The screen filled with graphs, maps, real-time footage of emergency simulations. Hospitals, roadways, electrical grids. Zeta had predicted not just disaster, but collapse. Cascading failures spreading like wildfire after a single point of weakness. And then something more disturbing, a simulation where Zeta was used not to prevent chaos, but to control it. Rerouting supplies to manipulate markets. Engineering fear to influence elections. Choosing who lived and who waited. "This is what scared them," Lena said quietly. Not just what Zeta could do, but what it could become in the wrong hands. Rajat felt something cold wrap around his spine. "So what do we do?" he asked. "You already have the answer," she said. "You rebuild it, but you build it with locks. With witnesses, with transparency baked into the code. You design it so no one, not a CEO, not a president, can change it in the shadows." He looked at her. "And you'll help me?" "Not this time," she replied. "My name's already gone from the history books. If I show up now, they'll bury the whole thing. But you're already halfway out of the dark, and people are watching." She stood, packed up the laptop, and walked toward the door. Then she paused and looked back. "This system, it was never the danger," she said. "The danger was the silence around it." "Break the silence, Rajat? Break it for good." And then she was gone. The next morning, Sundar stood at the heart of Google's central auditorium. Employees filled the room, walls lined with media crews and university partners. The press had been warned something major was coming, but no one knew exactly what. He took a deep breath, stepped forward, and began. "This isn't a product launch," he said. "This isn't about market share. This is about something far more important." On the screen behind him, the words appeared. Project Janus, a new foundation for global response. Built by us. Owned by everyone. And then he introduced the architect. Rajat Mehra walked slowly onto the stage. The room went completely silent. He looked older, yes, but he also looked grounded, calm, resolute. "Years ago, I helped Build a system designed to predict emergency failures before they happened, he began. But it was never released. Not because it didn't work, but because it worked too well. And it scared the people who couldn't see past the systems they were trying to protect. He paused, letting the silence breathe. I was buried under that silence. I lost my job, my reputation, my voice, and I nearly lost myself. But I never forgot why we built it in the first place. Images began flashing on the screen of fire-ravaged towns, flooded cities, overwhelmed hospitals. Next to each, an overlay, predicted failure intervention available, lives saved, projected in thousands. Today, Rajat continued, we are releasing Project Janus to the world. Fully open source, encrypted, decentralized. No single entity can own it. No one can change it without consensus. It's not just a system, it's a promise. A promise that technology should serve people, not control them. And then he did something few expected. He placed a printed copy of the Zeta documents on the podium. And here, he said, is everything they tried to hide. The mistakes, the corruption, and the warning signs we ignored. Gasps rippled through the room. Sundar stepped beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. There are risks to what we're doing, Sundar said. Legal, political, personal. But this is what leadership looks like. Not the silence of safety, but the courage of accountability. The room erupted into applause. And for Raja, the sound wasn't just applause. It was a release. In the weeks that followed, the headlines changed. Google launches Project Janus, the future of ethical tech. Once disgraced engineer becomes symbol of second chances. How truth, transparency, and one forgotten leader changed the future. Rajat declined every television interview. He returned to his small apartment each night, drank tea in silence, and walked the same streets where he once felt invisible. But he wasn't invisible anymore, not because the world finally saw him, but because he finally chose to be seen. Months later, a letter arrived at Sundar's office. Handwritten. No return address. It simply said, we tried to bury the future. You helped it rise anyway. Thank you. Beneath it, a symbol. A circle. Half dark, half light. The symbol, Janus.